Let's get started, and a very, very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining me again for another episode of the FinTech Chronicler. And today we will be diving into the world of mobile payments with a spotlight on Apple Pay. So grab your iPhone if you have it, and let's get started. So Apple Pay was the brainchild of Appen Inc., which made its entrance, which was launched in the market in 2014. And it's like a magical one-place solution which allows you to make payments with just a tap, whether in store or make a payment in app, shopping online. You can do this with your iPhone, you can do this with your Apple Watch, iPad, Mac, any Apple device. And it makes things super. It makes things like wallets archaic, yes, and it makes payments in general a lot more fun to do. So let's try breaking down what all has been happening at Apple Pay. Why? Because recently Apple lost a huge lawsuit about their NFC payment devices, and so that led them to opening up NFC payments for the entire ecosystem. So before we understand what really has happened on the NFC payment and what that means for the future of payments in general, let's first have a brief history and an overview of Apple Pay. So starting with the launch, which was back in October 2014 with the iPhone 6 and the Apple Watches, and the thesis at that point in time for Apple was all about convenience and security, and they'd used RFID based payments also to make it as easy, as seamless for users to pay. Then fast forward to a few years where, by 2016 itself, Apple had become one of the biggest payment platform in the US, and they supported all credit cards and debit cards, and as well as different payment modes like scan to pay, contactless, and all of that. Now security is obviously something that I think Apple is really well known for, and so one of the first things that they did when they launched Apple Pay was to ensure that all of their transactions are encrypted and tokenized. So instead of actually storing the card details of users, every card that a user added onto their Apple wallets had a unique device account number, which was encrypted and stored securely in a fashion that the merchants at the end could never get access to the real card details. Plus also, Apple has been a pioneer with respect to biometric identification, so Face ID, thumbprints, and all of those as well, to make sure that you're able to lock down your transactions. And it doesn't just stop there. Apple then integrated with Apple Cash and made sure that this entire Apple payment network was opened up for peer-to-peer networks. So there were a lot more perks over there. And this kind of seamlessly wove into the entire Apple Wallet ecosystem. And then in 2020 is when they announced a game-changing NFC chip for all of their ecosystem players. And just a few weeks ago, they announced that they're going to be opening up these NFC chips for all third-party developers. So you won't necessarily need an Apple Pay or an Apple Wallet in order to make use of this seamless contactless transaction mechanism. So this is actually huge, and it opens up a lot of possibilities for a lot of fintech innovations to happen. So this is what today's community podcast is going to be all about. But before we dive in, the usual, ground rules that we have. So at any point in time that you feel like either I'm not making sense, or you've had a completely different experience, or you know something that probably I've missed out, please feel free to just raise your hand, come up on stage, and I'll pull you right up on stage. We already had Dattare with us on stage, so I'm very happy about that as well. And we'll have like a great conversation and learn from each other. So with that said, Datta, if you would want to contribute, yes, this is your chance. Otherwise, let's get started with the different financial products that Apple has, starting with Apple Cash. Now, imagine you have a digital card that's in your Apple Wallet, and that works just like how you would think of a debit card. You can send money, you can receive money, and because it's integrated with iMessage, Apple's messaging app as well, you can also send and receive money just through messages as well. So it makes it very convenient for peer-to-peer transactions and peer-to-peer payments to also happen. Plus, on top of that, what Apple had done is they set up something known as the Family Cash app. So parents can set up like an Apple Cash family and give pocket money to their kids, teach them financial independence while also maintaining a watchful eye on where is it that their kids are spending. So it's much easier than transferring funds to the kids, right? Makes it very easy peasy over there. The next financial product that Apple has in the entire Apple financial ecosystem is the Apple Card. And this isn't just any ordinary card. It's designed by Apple and it's backed by Goldman Sachs. And the rewards on the program was simply astonishing. Like for every purchase that you make with your physical card, you get a 1% cashback. If you've done the payment routed via Apple Pay, you get 2% cashback. And if you've made payments on any Apple products and a few select partners, you can get up to 3% cashback as well. Plus, there were no joining fees, no annual fees. And of course, security features were top notch. By the way, did I mention that the design was also like a sleek titanium sort of a design? So yes, more swag value over there as well. However, Goldman Sachs is reportedly planning to end this partnership with Apple. And in order to understand why this is happening, let's see the perspective of Apple Cards from both the companies. First, let's talk about the financial losses that Goldman Sachs raked up. So reportedly in 2022 alone, as of early 2022, where Apple Card was just about 6 months old, Goldman Sachs had a loss of over 1 billion. Why is that? Well, one, revenue sources, which was both the fees that you can, the interest that you can charge, as well as the joining fees, annual fees, both of those were very, very low. So double whammy over there for Goldman Sachs. Next up was a bunch of operational challenges also. Because one, Apple pushed for a lot of very aggressive stance when it came to underwriting and pricing the products for their Apple consumers. So this made it really hard for Goldman to kind of turn a profit on the Apple Cards program. Honestly, in my opinion, this was a very tough gig for Apple. And third point was more on the consumer service aspect, where we all know, right, Apple has like a very high benchmark when it comes to servicing their customers. And there were so many dissatisfied customers with the Apple Card that it really caused a huge strain on Goldman Sachs backend as well. So it was not really a good look for Goldman, especially because back in 2020, 2022, Goldman was experimenting. They just launched their consumer banking front. So the fact that they were overwhelmed or inundated with so many bad customer calls, well, I mean, all of us B2C builders know, right? Like NPS is one of the biggest key metrics all of us look into. So it was not really a good look for Goldman over there. And finally, because of all of this, the fourth reason, which I think is the biggest reason to play, is a strategic shift that Goldman is undergoing as well, where they're really back to the drawing board and they're trying to reevaluate whether this entire consumer banking strategy even made sense for them or not, and whether it makes sense to continue in the consumer lending space or just completely exit it. So that's going to be some big changes from Goldman Sachs end. By the way, Apple Card also plans to launch in India with HDFC. So I do hope HDFC has taken note from the entire failure, or rather the strategic misalignment from Goldman Sachs, and taken notes and made sure that their program isn't as aggressive as what Goldman's was. And I don't think it will be, because honestly, HDFC is one of those very stringent companies. They were the first to cut back on their reward points in any ways during COVID. So yeah, let's see. Anyways, now that we've, I forgot another big product launch of Apple, which was the Apple Pay Later. Now this is actually Apple's unique take on buy now pay later, and them encashing onto the buy now pay later trend. And you can split so it was a very simple sort of a BNPL product where you can split it into 4 to 6 payments, and you'll not be charged any interest on them if you pay within those 4 to 6, however you've split it. Either you've chosen 4 or you've chosen 5, 6, whatever. If you pay it within those installments, you charge no fees, no interest. So it's perfect for those Apple consumers who want to buy like a higher end, or they want to upgrade to a higher end Apple product, but they just need a little bit of extra time in order to manage their payments. Again, the data was very secure because it was encrypted behind Apple's paywalls, and we all know how secure data, how much Apple takes consumer privacy seriously, right? All right. So now moving on to the monetary avenues that Apple had from Apple Pay. And first, I think for this, let's talk about the transaction fees that Apple makes. Now, for every transaction that's made on Apple Pay, Apple earns 0.15% of every transaction. So while they aren't really charging the customers, but it's the issuing bank who ends up paying Apple for processing each of these transactions. Why? Because, Apple claims that, they're helping to reduce the risk of fraud with a lot of their device-based intelligence that they had. So it was supposed to make banks happy, but yes, we saw how that smart move turned out for Goldman, right? Anyways, Apple also collaborated with a lot of other partnerships as well, right from merchants to different card networks, and this also added to one stream of income for Apple. Then the digital wallet services, where I think most of you would probably know that if you make purchases in Apple's ecosystem, then you're charged somewhere close to about a 30% MDR. So that was, again, all of that tied back into Apple Pay as well. So that was also another good revenue stream. So yes, if I had to talk about how Apple grew the entire Apple payments ecosystem, between 2022 to 2023, there was a report, US-based report of course, which said that 90% of consumers for all of their digital transactions used Apple wallets. That's how big a chunk they've taken over. And it's a very strong market position. So, and with 30% revenue, of course, there's a huge chunk of revenue that they're building, a very impressive amount. While I could not get the exact numbers because they're so close-walled about all of this, but yes, it's a huge number. So when Apple came up with NFC payment, and by NFC payment, what they were trying to do is to make any Apple device a POS system using the near field communication. This would have actually increased their chunk of revenues that they could earn from the Apple Financial Services Network. However, okay, before we get into the lawsuit, let's talk a little bit about NFC and NFC payment in general. So NFC, like I mentioned, stands for near field communication, and this was actually designed way back in the 1990s, early 2000, and it was like a collaboration between some of the biggest mobile players of that time. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Nokia, Philips, Sony. So they came up with this secure and convenient short-range wireless communication technique, which led to the creation of NFC. And so this is literally like a case of, teamwork makes the dream work. But anyways, fast forward to 2014, Apple with the iPhone 6 and the Apple Watch launched this NFC capability into their payment systems and kind of pioneered one of the first cases of contactless payments in the US. I will take a quick pause here because we have Arsh with us. Hi Arsh, how are you doing? And do you have a, kind of something that you would want to share with us on the topic? Please do go for it. Alright, we shall circle back to Arsh, but continuing on with Apple Pay's NFC based payments. So while this was 2014, in 2020 they opened up Apple Pay to enable Apple Pay or any Apple wallet to use their NFC to also get inbound transactions. So it's not just about you making payments, but you could also collect payments through an Apple NFC. And now I don't know if you guys have seen, but Apple has also come up with, you just need to tap two phones together in order for you to transfer money. It's as seamless as that, and it does it in less than 3 seconds. So it's kind of faster than even UPI side. But yes, what happened here was that everything was being gate kept within the Apple ecosystem. This meant third-party mobile providers were completely excluded. And if they have 90% of the US market, that is definitely a huge monopoly over there. So this is where the European Union or the European Commission, they come into the picture, and they weren't very happy. In fact, they were very dissatisfied with Apple's restrictive practices, and they launched an antitrust investigation into Apple. And they found that Apple was actually stifling competition in the mobile payment space, even in Europe and the entire EU and European economic areas. So in order to avoid, once they lost the case, they realized that either they're going to get huge fines and they're going to get a lot of bad press. So in order to avoid that, Apple agreed to open up their NFC-based technology to third-party app providers. But wait, there's a lot more. Apple has also promised that they're committed to helping develop APIs that will enable equal and equivalent access to NFC components in host card emulation mode. So this technique will allow, of course, for the payments to happen, but also for the same level of security and tokenization that's there on Apple's wallets as well. So this can actually happen across any device that's NFC enabled. You no longer need to be walled into the Apple ecosystem. So that now brings us to the most exciting part, which is, what does this mean for developers? Well, now they can start creating apps and use the NFC enabled payment, any NFC enabled payment device, without actually needing a payment service provider license or even like a very binding agreement with the PSP provider. That's a huge plus. And also users can start setting up their preferred payment apps as a default and access the security features or authentication features like Apple's Face ID across a plethora of different devices. So this opens up a whole new world of possibilities. Of course, it's not like it's going to be very easy over there, because there are still, like for example, in the US, there are still lawsuits around the NFC chips that Apple makes themselves. So if you guys remember, Apple moved away from Intel into their own internal chips. So there is concern over there as well. So it's really like the plot is thickening over there. But yes, I really feel this is going to open up a lot of innovative new use cases. We're going to see people just thinking beyond payments. We will see this we'll see payments being embedded in transit systems. We can see payments, these NFC chips being used for access controls, for example, loyalty programs. Like if you've swiped in or checked into, say, a Starbucks store with your Apple phone or any NFC device, then you could possibly get, load on with loyalty programs for store visits and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just thinking out loud here. The sky is really the limit over here. But yes, let's not forget that at the end of the day, it's all about users' benefits, users' flexibility, and the security that we'll be providing to end users. So that's going to be, so I think at the end of the day, while Apple is opening up their ecosystem, the players who will win are the ones who focus on these three aspects for the user. So that's it that I had planned for today's Apple's decision to open up their NFC technology, and why I feel this could be a game changer, which can have far-reaching implications in the industry, not just in terms of more competition and innovation, but also choices for the end users. So that's it. That's all that I had. If you did like it, then please do give a reaction. And yes, the floor is all yours for anyone who would have any questions. Arsh, circling back to see if you can hear us, and I would love to hear from you. We also have Krishna and my very favorite person, Amitji, also coming up on stage. Hi Krishna, hi Amitji. Let's first hear from Arsh. Arsh, is everyone able to hear? Yes, hi Arsh. Please do give us a brief intro, and yes, we would love to hear from you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is my first. This is the first time I have attended to an event, and I got to learn a lot from you. Thank you.
Thank you
Malika,
so
for
much,
that.
Ash. Thank you. But yes, go for it. Have you used Apple payments or any Apple financial products so far? All right. Let's hear it from Amit ji. Now, Amit ji is someone who's very close to me because every time he comes up on stage, he asks me or he shares such a mind-boggling piece of information that I always go back wanting to learn more. Amit ji, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Kamalika, for a wonderful introduction of mine. And you are one of the greatest, you are the expert in the fintech business.
No,
and
no,
we would
sir.
love to hear from you. Thank you so much. My question would be, see, I also use Apple iPhone, but the thing is that I just wanted to share my experience with you with respect to Apple Pay.
Okay.
Apple
Yes.
Pay.
Yes.
So once, suppose if we subscribe to Apple Pay, then it is not easy to delete the payment system. Like suppose if I pay my credit card details on the Apple Pay,
Yeah.
I won't be able to delete it. So is there any shortcoming or drawbacks of the Apple Pay? Like,
No. So you can delete it, but I think because Apple so far always wanted to keep people into their ecosystem, so which is why they've made the delete option hidden inside their app.
Sorry to interrupt you in between, but RBI has clearly mandated that one should able to delete his or her credit card details or debit card details at ease.
Yes.
And Apple is violating the RBI code of conduct.
So the way that Apple has designed it, it's like for every app's subscription that you have. Let's say you have a subscription for Apple TV. You also have a subscription for, I can't think of it. Let's say LinkedIn Premium itself. Let's say that you've enabled LinkedIn Premium through Apple itself. Now for every subscription that you have to go into the Play Store and manually delete for every one of those subscriptions, which I agree, it's not a very easy thing to do. The alternative that I do is, and I know that this is not a very good way of doing it, but I've gone back to my bank and said that, you know what, payments coming in from Apple, please disable all of them.
No, the thing is that recently I had an experience with Amazon Pay. I had subscribed with my credit card and it got subscribed for the next month also, like for August, September, which I don't want. I suppose if I want only for the month of, let's say, August, so how could I do that? So again, I just checked, I just figured out, and then I got deleted from the thing. So the process of deleting is not at ease.
It's not.
It's a complex system. So that is what I just wanted to clear.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I think it's a very intentional design decision that these companies have taken.
Because most of the apps are they just tell you to get it subscribed to their services, but when it comes to deleting of a payment system, then it becomes a difficult, because why should I pay for, let's say I don't want September, why should I pay? And it is an auto pay, e-mandate.
Yeah.
So that is scary, like, right? So I don't want let's say I don't want subscription for September, October next month. Why would I pay? But it's automatically deleted from your account, from your credit card account, whatever.
Very true. In fact, this actually reminds me, I'm sorry I'm digressing a little, but it reminds me of a very funny incident that I had. So there was this book by, I'm forgetting the author's name, but the book's name was Bulls, Bears and Other Animals. So, and this was about the stock market, of course. So there he had mentioned that imagine you have a product where to enter, you're not charging anyone anything. But the minute they want to leave, you start charging them exorbitantly. So imagine at the exit, if you're charging, how much you can charge. So if
same thing had happened with the cryptos, right? Crypto wallet. If you can open it easily, but you cannot withdraw your cash or money easily. So it gets blocked, right? in terms of crypto wallets, right?
Yeah.
That is what I just wanted to highlight. Thank you, Kamalika.
Thank you so much, Amit ji. Next, we'll move on to Krishna Kumar, and I'm very excited to hear from Krishna Kumar because he's also someone who spent a reasonable amount of time in the fintech space. Krishna, welcome. I would love to hear from you. Krishna, can you hear us?
Yeah, I think I'm there right now.
Yes.
You guys. Hi, Kamalika.
Hi, Krishna.
Hi. The discussion with Amit was, very apt for today's fintech
Absolutely.
and, players coming in, because there's some of the, payment aggregators, payment systems where I'm paying a EMI, like I'm paying something, and automatically it sets up for e-mandate. There is a description somewhere there, but if you overlook that, e-mandate is set without your knowledge.
Yep.
Many times without your knowledge. But yes, for the sake of it, they just show it. So yeah, Kamalika, I think from the perspective of this iPhone coming with NFC chips, I just was about going through the details. I don't think the app development is yet open in India. Am I right?
They've opened it up in Europe, and so if you have an app that's developed by a player over there, then they have to let you use alternative wallets also to pay. But yeah, who's going to end up? I think only a few very niche gamers are going to end up using it. So yes.
Yeah, true. And how do you think this NFC in mobiles, basically will affect B2B payments? I don't, most of these use case scenarios is in consumer sector pretty much.
You're right.
Right. So the NFCs, obviously it's the consumer market is the largest market on any given day. So, but do you see any use case where this can be brought into a B2B segment? Because B2B is yet in pretty much a traditional payment mechanism systems.
I'm just thinking out loud, and this is a very off use case which maybe in India may not really be applicable, but let's say that you are a retail shopkeeper and you get your supplies from a wholesaler or from the dealer or something like that, and at the point of delivery or whatever, if you've taken it on credit, then on the basis of whatever milestones that you achieve, maybe at that point in time you do a tap to pay. Will that make sense? I'm not it seems like a very niche use case even then.
True, because mobile to mobile in a B2B is still I was just thinking loud over here, how can this mobile payments come into I think that's only in a supply chain in retail that we can really think of, where the retail segments can utilize this NFC payments, and
So
it's more secure.
I just came up with an idea on the go, and I don't know if it's feasible. Let's say in the logistics domain, shipment has to get delivered to X location. Now, once it reaches X location, until and unless that consignment's payment is completed, then the lock won't even open. So you can take delivery, you can store it, but you won't be able to access your goods.
Yeah, could be. And another maybe use case is, as you mentioned rightly, in a retail segment, let's say pharma, for example, there is still some traditional way of payment mechanisms when, a wholesaler or a super stockist delivers to these pharmacies. There is still a system where it is like you need to show a bill. Physical bill has to be shown in many cases.
Yeah.
So if you look at there, I think there's anyways the agents who travel, they have to have a mobile with the NFC chip. And I think there is an integration possible.
Yeah, so wherever there is like a direct sales agent involved or something like that, definitely. Oh, that's a nice use case. Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, Kamalika, that's what I just logged in and felt this is something useful being in a B2B payment industry. So fantastic. Nice talking to you.
Thank you so much for, because I was really able to pick your brain as well. So thank you so much, Krishna Kumar, and I really enjoyed today's session. If you did, I would love it if you also join us in the next episode. But until then, take care and see you all again later. Bye.